unemployment rate has risen to 4.1% in January, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. It's the first time since January 2022 that the unemployment rate's been above 4%. But what does this mean for Australians wanting a job, for immigration and possible Reserve Bank decisions? Leith Van Onselen is Chief Economist at the MB Fund and MB Super and is co-founder of the website macrobusiness.com.au. Leith, good afternoon.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me on.
Now, the RBA thought unemployment would end the year at 4.3%. That would seem like it's probably going to get there a lot sooner.
Absolutely. Look, I thought as soon as the Reserve Bank made that forecast early in the month that they were being overly optimistic. The fact of the matter is that all the forward-looking indicators on the labour market have been really poor. So, for example, SEEK releases a survey every month which basically measures the number of applicants per job, and that has soared. And it's soared for two reasons. Effectively, we've had weakening job demand from employers. So employers have less demand for workers, but at the same time, the supply of workers has rocketed at a record rate because we've got record immigration. So effectively, that pointed to higher unemployment, and we're starting to see that with today's labour market figures, whereby the unemployment rate's gone up. But the biggest story there, Kelly, is that employment growth has stalled to a crawl. So over the January quarter, we only created 10,200 jobs. And Australia basically needs to create about 35,000 jobs a month just to keep the unemployment rate stable in the face of this record population growth. So what that basically means is that the unemployment rate's going to continue rising unless we can create those jobs, which seems very unlikely when we're in a per capita recession. And obviously we've got very high interest rates.
So would the RBA, even though if you're trying to find a job it isn't good, would they view this as good for the economy?
Yeah, so certainly because unemployment is rising faster than their projections, what it basically does, so this is basically the silver lining to all this if you're a mortgage holder. It basically means that the Reserve Bank is much more likely to cut interest rates. And so the RBA came out earlier this month and was pretty hawkish in their commentary, saying that inflation's not coming down quick enough, and a few economists have taken that road as well. But if unemployment rises faster than their projections, and is currently doing so, it means that the Reserve Bank's likely to probably cut rates in the second half of this year, and they'll do it to basically stem the bleeding because we're losing so many jobs. And so effectively, that's the silver lining to this data if you're a mortgage holder.
How about the number of hours worked, Leith? Most people working, but fewer hours worked.
Yeah, that was an absolute shocker. So basically for 6 months straight, the number of hours worked across the economy has been falling, and they're up only 0.7% year on year. So that's basically comparing January this year to January last year. That's 0.7%. Now, that's growth, yes, but the civilian labour force, so that's basically the working age population, has grown by 2.9% in that same period. So effectively, the number of hours worked is barely growing at the same time as the population is growing very quickly because of this high immigration. And that's just another sign that we're not creating enough jobs to keep up this population growth, and why unemployment is going to continue rising.
It would seem like such an inverted way of looking at things, that if unemployment's high, then how would that affect interest rates, for example? Or does it have an effect on interest rates? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so basically the RBA doesn't just look at inflation. It's also supposed to look at the economy and avoid unemployment going too high in a recession and that sort of thing. So the strength of the economy is an impactor, but also a higher unemployment rate also means that wage growth is going to slow, and wage growth is basically one of the signs of inflation in the economy. So if unemployment rises, you have more competition for jobs among workers, and that tends to lead to lower wage growth. So it's basically a forward-looking indicator that wage growth is going to stall, which means inflation is going to stall.
Yeah. On that, could we see that rates cut sooner, before the second half of the year, or is that as soon as it's going to come?
Oh, absolutely. It certainly could happen. It all depends on how the data flows from here. So, for example, early next month we get the national accounts data for December. So that's where you get all your GDP figures and that sort of thing. If that comes in a lot weaker than expected, and if retail sales continue to worsen, they've been very poor. And if all the other sorts of data that feeds into the economy, inflation, the monthly inflation gauge, etc., if they all come in softer than expected, there is a distinct possibility that the Reserve Bank could cut rates before the middle of the year. Although I'm sort of tipping the second half sometime, but we really don't know. We really have to wait for the data.
Was there any sort of data on full-time jobs and how they came through during January?
Yeah, so basically, the overall number of jobs created was very poor, right? So that was only about 500.
500?
And the split up between part-time, 500 jobs over the month.
God.
That's right, and actually full-time. So if you look at it another way, which is using their trend data, so basically the month-to-month jumps around a lot, but if you look at their trend data, which tries to smooth out the peaks and troughs, the ABS reported that full-time employment actually fell by 4,500 over the month, whereas part-time employment increased by 12,000. So basically, we've got this rotation away from full-time work as well, and so that's basically one of the reasons why underemployment is also rising. So underemployment is basically people have a job but they want more hours, and that's been on the rise as well, and that rose by 0.1% as well in January. So it's also one of the reasons why the hours worked is falling. So if someone switches from a full-time job to a part-time job, they can still be working, but the number of hours worked falls, and that's one of the reasons why our hours worked has been growing so poorly in the last year, because we've had this rotation out of full-time work into part-time work.
Yeah. So, Leith, would you expect to see just a general gradual rise in the unemployment rate over the next 6 months?
Yes, absolutely. I think unemployment rate's going to continue rising towards the end of the year, except there's always month-to-month variations with this, because the monthly survey can be quite volatile. So, there is a possibility that next month, for example, the unemployment rate might dip down to 4%, and then it might go to 4.3 the next month, etc. But the trend, I think, is going to be poorer over this year. And my tip is that the unemployment rate will be close to 5% by the end of the year, versus the Reserve Bank's forecast of 4.3%. So all that basically means is that we're very likely to get interest rate cuts.
Yeah. Leith Van Onselen, great talking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Anytime.
And you can see Leith's analysis of these figures from 11 p.m. Queensland time on the website macrobusiness.com.au. And Leith Van Onselen, Chief Economist at the MB Fund and MB Super, also co-founder of the website Macro Business.